255 Hellcats a month stolen.
Take a look at this video. The car thief hops in the blue Dodge Charger, taking off out the front of the lot.
This is the car that was taken.
Dodge Hellcats are reported stolen.
That's one every 3 hours somewhere in America. No smashed steering column, no hot wiring, a tablet, a blank key, 3 minutes. The most powerful muscle car Dodge ever built can't outrun the people taking it. This is how the Hellcat became the most hunted car in America. Here's a number that shouldn't be possible. Between 2020 and 2022, the Dodge Charger Hellcat was stolen 60 times more often than the average car on the road. Not twice as often, not 10 times, 60. In the insurance data for those model years, the Charger Hellcat racked up more than 6,000 theft claims. That works out to around 255 cars a month, disappearing from driveways and office parking lots and apartment complexes month after month for years. And the people taking them aren't kids with a slim gym and a screwdriver. They show up in teams, 3 cars, sometimes 4, one backs in next to the target, one parks across the lot with its headlights on, watching the entrance, a third circles the block. The guy on the car breaks a single window, the one the alarm doesn't monitor, drops below the window line where nobody walking past can see him, and goes to work with a handheld programmer. 8 minutes later, on a slow night, a $70,000 car pulls out of the lot and is gone before the owner finishes his coffee inside. The owner did everything right. Locked doors, factory alarm, some of them had kill switches. It didn't matter. You're about to see how organized crews turned a 700 horsepower American icon into the easiest big score in the country, how they're moving millions of dollars in strip parts through warehouses and social media, and why every fix Dodge rolled out got beaten before the ink dried. And at the end, the one thing the thieves couldn't beat, the mistake baked into the whole operation. Start with the car, because the car is the reason all of this exists. The Hellcat was never supposed to be subtle. Dodge dropped a supercharged 6.2-liter V8 into a family-shaped coupe and a 4-door sedan, pushing over 700 horsepower to the rear wheels, top speed right around 200 miles an hour. A car that could embarrass exotics costing 3 times as much, sold at a price a guy with a decent job and a payment plan could actually reach. That combination is exactly why enthusiasts love it. It's also exactly why it became a target. Think about what a thief is actually looking at. A car worth $70,000 to $80,000 new. An engine, a supercharger, a transmission, and a set of electronics that are each worth thousands on their own, stripped and sold separately. High demand too, because every Hellcat owner who wraps his car around a pole needs those exact parts to put it back together, and there aren't enough clean ones to go around. That shortage keeps the price of a stolen supercharger high and the questions low. At a resale market where a stranger on the internet will buy a bare engine and never ask where it came from, and you've got something close to a perfect target. For a professional theft ring, that's not a car. That's a vending machine that pays out every time. But value alone doesn't explain it. Plenty of expensive cars sit in those same parking lots untouched. There was a video out of Chicago that made this point better than any statistic. A crew rolls into a lot at 5 in the morning to take a Hellcat. Backed into a space a few feet away is a Porsche 911 convertible. Worth more than the Hellcat. They don't even look at it. Why walk past the more expensive car? Because the Porsche is hard and the Hellcat is easy. And that gap, the difference between hard and easy, is the whole story. Here's how easy actually looked. Most modern cars use a wireless key fob and a push-button start. The car and the key talk to each other over a constant radio signal, so the car knows the key is nearby and lets you start it. Convenient. Also, if you can get into the car's internal network, you can tell the car to accept a brand new key that you brought with you. A blank fob, programmed on the spot, and now your key is a real key. The car thinks you own it. On the Hellcat, getting into that network was almost insultingly simple. Early on, thieves went through the diagnostic port, the same port a mechanic plugs into. Then owners started figuring out the crews were reaching a connector behind the glove box, tapping straight into the car's communication bus and programming a key from there in minutes. Break the one unmonitored window, pop the glove box, plug in, program, drive. The factory alarm would scream for 30 seconds and then give up. The crews knew nobody comes running for a car alarm anymore. They just waited it out. That's the part that turned Hellcat owners into insomniacs. One owner online said he couldn't eat at a restaurant without sitting by the window to watch his car. Another had his stolen 3 weeks after he bought it, alarm and all, and summed it up in one line: break the glass, make a new key, drive off. They don't care that the alarm goes off. So now you understand the machine and the method. Here's where it stops being scattered thieves and becomes a business. Because stealing the car is only step one. The money is in what happens after. In March of 2025 in California, police who'd spent 6 months chasing a pattern of stolen muscle cars finally opened the doors on what they'd been hunting. 2 locations, one in Fresno, one down in Huntington Park in the Los Angeles sprawl. Inside, they didn't find a car. They found 75 of them. Chargers, Challengers, Durangos, Trackhawks, Camaros, in various states of being taken apart. Piles of engines, piles of doors, hundreds, maybe thousands of individual parts stacked and sorted like a hardware store. $3 million in the stolen muscle in 2 buildings. This is what a chop shop actually is, not a garage where somebody hides a hot car until the heat dies down. A disassembly line, a stolen Hellcat comes in whole and leaves as 40 separate listings. The engine goes to one buyer, the transmission to another, the supercharger, worth thousands on its own, to a third. And that is what makes the whole thing nearly untraceable. Individual parts don't carry the car's identity the way the whole car does. A short block on a shelf is just a short block. There's no window sticker, no title, no plate to run. Once the car is in pieces, the evidence is in pieces too, scattered across a dozen buyers who each think they're getting a good deal on a used part. The crews that don't strip the cars do something almost worse. They keep the car whole and give it a new identity. They pull the identification number off a wrecked Hellcat, a legally totaled one bought at a salvage auction, and stamp that identity onto the stolen one. Now the stolen car has clean paperwork. It gets a fresh title, a fresh plate, and sells to a buyer who has no idea, sometimes in another state, at half of what it's worth. That's called VIN switching, and when it's done well, the guy who buys the car is driving stolen property and doesn't know it. 75 cars in California. That was one operation. Think about the scale that implies. If 2 buildings in one part of one state held $3 million in stolen muscle, and at the peak these cars were vanishing at a couple hundred a month across the country, this isn't a crime wave, it's an industry, with supply, with demand, with distribution, and with people running it who understand margins better than most legitimate businesses. And in this California case, when police went through those buildings, they didn't just find car parts. They found 10 firearms, including illegal short-barreled rifles. That's the other thing, hiding underneath the muscle car story. The people stripping these cars weren't hobbyists cutting corners. They were armed, organized, and running it like the serious criminal enterprise it was. Which raises the obvious question. If the whole world could see this happening, if there were viral videos and insurance reports and warehouses full of evidence, where was Dodge? This is where it gets frustrating if you're an owner. Dodge knew. They'd known for years. The theft numbers were public, the videos were everywhere, and the company that built the car was in the best position of anyone to fix the hole. So they started pushing out countermeasures, and every one of them landed a step behind. First came a software update that was supposed to limit the car to a crawl if it detected a theft. Owners talked about an enhanced security mode that dropped the engine to under 3 horsepower, turning a 700 horsepower monster into something that could barely climb out of a parking spot. A stolen Hellcat that can't do more than walking pace isn't worth stealing. Clever idea, it got pulled. Then came a dealer procedure to lock down the radio hub so a new key couldn't be programmed at all, and that one actually worked. There's a story from January of 2026, an owner whose car got hit at 10 to 4 in the morning. The crew went for that connector behind the glove box, spent 10 minutes trying to program a key and couldn't. The lockout held. They walked away with a broken window and nothing else. The fix was real. The catch was, you had to know it existed, drive to a dealer, and hope the service department had ever heard of it. Plenty hadn't. So the cars that got protected were the cars whose owners had already spent nights reading theft forums, and everybody else stayed a sitting target. Then, in 2025, Dodge's Performance Parts Division released an actual anti-theft module. Two-factor authentication for the starting circuit, a code sequence you enter before the car will run. A real fix finally. Except it landed in the spring of 2025, years into an epidemic that had been running since the pandemic. Almost $700 out of the owner's pocket to bolt on a fix for a hole the factory built into the car, and owners weren't exactly grateful. One car outlet asked the obvious question in print: why wasn't this done 4 years ago when Hellcats were getting stolen constantly? One owner put it flatter: it should never have gotten to this point at any level. Here's the pattern, and it's the pattern behind almost every story like this one. Enforcement always adapts. It just always adapts second. The manufacturer patches the hole the thieves already climbed through, and by the time the patch reaches the cars, the crews have found the next hole. The people stealing the cars were faster, better funded, and more motivated than the system trying to stop them. For years, they simply outran it. But outrunning the system and disappearing from it are two different things, and this is where the crews made their mistake. Go back to late 2024 to Massachusetts to an investigation somebody in a police department decided to call Operation Hellcat. For about a year and a half, dealerships across the state had been getting hit in the dead of night, not one car at a time. Crews of anywhere from 2 to 10 people breaking into lots in the early morning hours and clearing them out. One dealership in Quincy lost 8 cars in a single night. By the time investigators pulled the whole picture together, they were looking at more than 60 vehicles gone and over $2.5 million in losses. And the crews were doing it with a specific tool, a handheld key programmer, a professional-grade device that let them cut working keys for the cars they were about to steal. It was the engine of the entire operation. Without it, none of the thefts happened. It was also, and they either didn't know this or didn't care, the thing that hanged them. Because that programmer required the user to log in. Think about that for a second. Every time a crew member fired up that device to steal a car, the tool quietly recorded who was using it. The authentication data, the cellular connection tying it to a location and a time. Every theft signed. The single most important piece of equipment in the whole operation was keeping a guest list. The guy treated the theft like it was untraceable. The tool in his hand was writing his confession the entire time. Investigators pulled that authentication data. They pulled cell records that put devices at dealerships on the nights. Cars vanished. They pulled surveillance footage. And then the part that never changes in these stories, they pulled the crew's own social media, where people had posted photos and videos from inside the operation. When they finally moved, 38 local and federal agencies executed the raids together. 11 addresses, and in those houses they found the programmers, stacks of key fobs, license plates, a stolen Hellcat Supercharger sitting on a shelf, and an entire Dodge Charger Hellcat. 12 men charged. They also found firearms and parts to convert semi-automatic weapons to fully automatic, same as California. The muscle car theft was the visible layer. Underneath it was something heavier. Here's what the whole thing comes down to, and it's bigger than one car company or one state. The reason the Hellcat got hunted like this is a collision between two things nobody designed on purpose. On one side, a car built to be a loud, fast, affordable icon, which made it a dream to own and a jackpot to steal. On the other side, a security system that treated the car like it was worth a fraction of its actual value, a lock a child could pick on a safe full of gold. The car said, "Take me." The lock said sure, and organized crime read both signals perfectly, faster than the owners, faster than the police, faster than the manufacturer. The crews that lasted understood the whole board. They knew which window the alarm ignored. They knew the connector behind the glove box. They knew a car in pieces can't be traced and a car with a new number can be sold to a stranger 3 states away. They ran it like a business because it was one. What they missed was the same thing the guys who film their own crimes always miss. The tools that make the crime easy also make a record. The programmer that cut the keys kept the log. The phones that coordinated the runs left a trail. The videos that fed their egos became exhibits. Every advantage they built had a receipt attached, and eventually somebody added up the receipts. That's why the busts came, and that's also why they won't be the last ones, in either direction. Because as of right now, the crews haven't stopped. Hellcats are still going missing every few hours. Dodge's real fix still doesn't cover every car on the road. And in that California case, after 75 recovered vehicles and 110 felony counts, 2 of the men police wanted were never caught. A 20-year-old and a 22-year-old named in the warrants wanted on charges tied to stolen cars and illegal firearms. Last anyone knew, still out there. Still presumably doing the only thing that made them any money. So here's the question worth arguing about. Was the Hellcat doomed the moment Dodge built a supercar that anyone could afford and almost anyone could steal? Or did a company that knew exactly how its car was being taken for years share the blame for everyone that vanished? Drop where you land in the comments. And if you want more stories about the machines that became too dangerous to own, hit subscribe. The next one takes it even further.